Let's go.
You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Podcast listeners, Al Martin here, Making Data Simple. Look, I always change things up a little bit. My podcast, kind of do what I want. You know, that's just how it works. So anyway, today what I'm going to do is I've got some IBMers with me today. I've been doing a lot of entrepreneurs and startups over the last few weeks. I pause for a second because I've got some folks here that are doing some great work at IBM. I've got Greg Hintermeister, must be a little German, Chris Kirby, and Dirk DeRoos. 3 Americans, 1 Canadian, but two Canadians. Two Canadians. Oh, yes, that's right. I forgot, Chris, you're a Canadian too, right?
That's right. Winnipeg, Manitoba, north of North Dakota, if that helps.
Does that mean I have to pay a tariff here or something?
That's too soon, Al. Too soon.
Sorry. Yes, that wasn't my idea. Look, so here's what we're going to talk about. These guys within IBM, they came up with a novel concept, just in the concept of training. So difficult with a place like IBM. I'm sure many people are listening out there. I don't know how many products we got, guys. Thousands of products when it comes down to it. It's hard to put all this stuff, know everything end to end. And so they came up with this concept called architecture advantage, by which they're really able to, I'm going to let them explain it. It's about whiteboarding. I'll let them the fill in the blanks here. I'm just going to give you a little lead in. Really an amazing way to train and to retain and to be able to present in front of clients. So you're differentiated, you're focused on capabilities, not products, and you're trying to solve problems and pain points. With that, let me pause for a second. I want to give you guys an opportunity to introduce yourselves. Now, we do have a lot of people on the call today, so we're trying to talk over one another. And we don't want to take 45 minutes for introductions. But a quick introduction, I think, is still in order. I'm going to start with a Canadian up to the upper right that I can see him. You don't get to see the video, guys. Sorry about that. Chris Kirby, give us a quick introduction, if you would.
Hey, Al, it's a good thing they can't see me. I haven't had a chance to clean up the office here. So here I am amongst the clutter. So I'm Chris Kirby. I lead the account technical leader function in the Americas. For those of you that don't know what an account technical leader is, think of it broadly as a field CTO or pre-sales technical architect. I like to say that ATLs add technology depth to the account teams that serve our clients. I've been doing that for almost 3 years now. Prior to that, I had roles in our consulting organization and in our software development organization as well. I'm a recovering software developer, and I was a data scientist before it was cool.
I wish you'd just thrown all that stuff on the floor, and then I could have told you, you didn't have to do that, but that'd have been fun. Anyway, earlier, before we joined the call, he blamed everything on his wife. So hopefully your wife listens in, and then you're going to be in the doghouse. Anyway, Dirk DeRoos, go ahead. You're going to...
I'm Dirk DeRoos. I'm the other Canadian, or maybe Chris is the other Canadian. I'm out of Toronto, Canada, and my job is learning content architect, and my focus is on our data platform. And my job in being a learning content architect is to make sure that our sellers and tech sellers have the information that they need about their products, but also kind of the backdrops that their products fit into so that they can have relevant conversations with their customers.
And Mr. Hintermeister.
Good to see you again, Al. Greg Hintermeister. For work, I'm a distinguished engineer and IBM Master Inventor, and day job is working complex deals. And I think it was a couple years ago I was fortunate enough to be on this podcast. So I appreciate being back.
You were. I forget. That's awesome. Yeah. You got to get 5 before you get a jacket, man. So you got 3 more to go.
Just a couple more. That's right. Very good.
So you got to work on it. Look, so architecture advantage. This was a unique training event, typically live. We can do it virtual. Pretty intense. What is it, 3 days now?
Yeah.
3 days of all in. Why change? Why now? Why IBM? You guys got some very unique methodologies that you use that I thought I'd share. I mean, it's pretty open. I'll share with the external community as well. But who wants to describe or take a first go at what architecture advantage is and how it's reshaped how we learn?
Well, I'll give it a start. And I'm actually thinking we might have different points of view because it's for me, it's such a personal, enriching program that we might have different complementary perspectives. For me, it was, in these complex deals, yes, technology is one of the key ways to solve our customers' challenges. And that's true for any industry, anybody. For me, the most important thing is how do we communicate that in a way that grows the relationship between between me and the client that I hope to serve for many, many years. It's not about showing, the latest poster of the cool thing. It's truly understanding what they're doing, why they might need to change because their current direction might be, going off in a direction they don't want to be in. Why now? Is it something that's going to cause some harm or at least not optimize their path? And the third one is why IBM. Anyway, that's my
most of the time
view.
clients don't care about IBM product, right? They just care about getting a solution, or they shouldn't. I got you. So disagree with Greg. That's always fun.
Well,
so Chris,
you can always count on me to disagree with somebody, or at least offer a different viewpoint. I'm not going to say I disagree with Greg, right? Greg's a smart guy. I tend to agree with like 98% of everything he says. But for me, what was key about the program that we developed and have been delivering is it unleashes, I'll say, our sales engineering team to present and talk about technology in a way that reflects their expertise and their experience. I'll give you the counter to Architecture Advantage, and I'll do it through an anecdote. So I was working with a new to an account team, and we'd set up a meeting to go talk to a CTO, I think. And she was very excited. This was her first big client meeting, and she'd secured this meeting with the CTO. And she says, and I'll go build a deck. And I was like, pardon? Right? She was going to go and assemble a PowerPoint deck that, she thought would resonate for this conversation. And having a little more experience, thankfully you don't have the video, so I'll let you imagine how much that is. I said, no, we're going to go have a conversation, and we're not going to bring anything, right? We're just going to have a conversation, and we're going to go talk to, I think the gentleman's name was Steve. And we did that, and we came out of it, and she was just like, wow, right? Like, we really resonated, we learned so much, et cetera. And I said, well, that's what we want to do. And for so much of our sales engineering teams, they're kind of locked into that PowerPoint model, right? I'm going to go take a deck that marketing's produced. I'm going to try and remove a few slides, et cetera, so that it reflects my point of view and gives me the ability to tailor it to the client. What we teach in Architecture Advantage just throws that all away. Says, look, you're going to start with a whiteboard. You're going to tell a story from the client's point of view. You're going to inject your experience and expertise, in a way that is authentic for you. And so it really changes the dynamic of the conversation with the client. It lets our folks, like I say, be themselves at work, if you will, right? Unleashes all their expertise and capacity. And the other thing I really like is it demonstrates expertise, right? Because it takes nothing to put up a PowerPoint slide, right, and speak to it and maybe get caught out on, well, what does that bullet mean over there? But in whiteboarding, like, if you can't do it, you can't do it. And so, if you can, it immediately establishes that your expertise in the field and where your knowledge is at.
It's no doubt it's easier. Just throw up a PowerPoint. But why are you so passionate about whiteboarding then?
So for me, my own perspective on this is that when I joined Greg and Chris and the team in the Architect Advantage program, it actually represented a fun challenge. I mean, for me, it mixed things up. Basically, where they said, "Hey, Dirk, tell the data story, but don't use slides." And that's it's freeing, but it's also intimidating, right? I mean, you do when you're in front of a customer or some IBMers that you're responsible for teaching, then it's all on you, and it's you and an empty sheet. And you have to fill that with whatever's in your brain. So there's a bit of a burden, and it's a higher degree of preparation actually that's required to do a properly vetted, well thought out whiteboard that's relevant to the audience in the room. And I think that's part of where the magic is too, right? Because like what Chris was talking about, like this whole medium and message thing, the fact that we're whiteboarding means that what you build, what comes out of your pen and out of your brain and out of your mouth in that moment is for them, never existed before, and is tailored for them. And the true magic of the whole whiteboard experience is when you go to that client and then they take the pen and color in their specifics, right? And then you have people taking pictures, and we've had so many anecdotes. I mean, Chris mentioned that one story with the man named Steve, and that is the essence, because once it becomes theirs and they contribute, it's also more memorable. Because one of the big things, like what Greg was alluding to in the multiple questions that we kind of frame, like why change, why IBM, why now? A big part of the challenge that we face, especially when you come in as yet another vendor with yet another PowerPoint deck, is that so much, even like an hour after the presentation, so many of the details are forgotten. But the medium of whiteboarding and that personal approach and the interactivity that it lends itself to, that makes it so much more relevant and so much more memorable.
I'm going to add one more thing to that. The one thing I'll add is we all have to talk about AI. It's changing the world. We sell it. Everybody sells it. And the danger, in my opinion, is we could create some AI artifact and deliver it to a customer. And I equate it like if I sent my wife a Valentine's Day card that was AI generated that would be a huge problem in the relationship. I actually think that's the same thing for a seller talking to a client. We really care about their success. We want to engage them with something that's us. And so a whiteboard removes all this, is it AI generated, and just says, let's talk about your challenges, how you and how you could achieve what you want. And let's draw it out. And let's do it together.
I was going to use the word authenticity because the exact point I was going to make, Greg, right? It's so easy to generate 50 pages of content with using generative AI that no human has ever looked at. And, perhaps I'm a bit of a Luddite in this one, but it kind of makes me angry when that happens, right? It says, I generated all this content. It was so easy. It took 5 minutes. Now I need you to spend 2 hours to go through it and try and understand the meaning that might be there, right? So that human to human connection around, visual communication and drawing, whether it's on a whiteboard or a napkin or, an iPad, you just don't get it anywhere else.
To add, look, I don't disagree. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge fan of whiteboarding. My simple anecdote, though, is that I feel like, at least for me, and I presume for a lot of people as well, if you can whiteboard, you know the material.
100%.
If you're comfortable with whiteboarding. So I try to put it to a point that I can whiteboard it. If I can whiteboard it, I understand it. If I can't, and I'm uncomfortable with that, and I know people are listening and are out there, it gives you the willies to think, oh my goodness, I'm going to go in front of the customer and whiteboard. That means you don't know the material the way you should. So learn it so you can do it. And I have to tell you, I've been in some very big meetings with C-suites. And by example, I study because I try to embody what I'm preaching here. So I'm able to whiteboard. And I get in and they promised me there would be a whiteboard. And there wasn't a whiteboard. So that was my real panic. So I get in there and then I'm like, all right. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't have a whiteboard. I have all this planned. This is going to be great. This is going to be my time. But you know what? It turned out to be better. Because what ends up happening is they start talking to me. I start waving my hands. I'm like, look, here's what you got. So I had it memorized, essentially, the whiteboard, such that I was drawing boxes. And then they started, I knew it was working when they get up and they start drawing boxes with me in the air. So we got these imaginary boxes. We're both going, yeah, but this has to go. And then I pull his imaginary box down. And then they trust you. It creates that trust that you know what you're talking about. You're teaching them something new. I'm a big fan of the book, The Challenger Cell. So it worked out fantastic. But, the other thing is, do you guys know that there is such a thing by death by PowerPoint? It's a real thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's a real thing. And in fact, I'm going to save everybody the story. And by the way, that's why I like an Architecture Advantage, because you tell a lot of stories that really make things meaningful. The best way to teach, I think, is through stories, because then people put their phones down, right? And they're really engaged. But one story I often teach, and this is for the Americans, I know people listen worldwide, is that, you know what happened January 16th, 2003? Any guess?
No.
That is when the Space Shuttle Columbia blew up.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
right? Lost seven people. I'll probably butcher this because, I'm going off memory here, but launched normal, goes into outer space. They're supposed to, I think they were going to do 16 days, 80 experiments, right? They go into orbit. As they're still, going through the atmosphere, 82 seconds into launch, a piece of spray foam insulation fell and collided and hit the outer edge of the shuttle's left wing is what it did. All right, so it does that. So what they do is they're going, is that a problem? I don't know if that's a problem. So NASA gets together, they start investigating all this stuff. And I think we know the story. They come back into orbit, gets too hot, and essentially blows up. So they're like, how could that happen? So what they did is NASA officials got with Boeing, and they did an assessment of what went wrong. And it boiled down to a slide. And the slide, you'd have to see the slide. You can look at it online. In which case, it's just like one of our normal slides with too many words. You can't see what's going on. They got some big font, some small font. Usually if it's big font, it implies that it must be important. Small font is not important. The long and short of it is, it basically landed on, I think it was one area that said the flight condition is significantly outside of test database, which is really in small font at the bottom of the slide. And I think it was something like, and I could get this wrong again, but is 600 times smaller than anything that they have ever tested. I mean, well, it was 600 times more massive, something like that, than they've ever tested. And so they came back and said it was an epidemic of overuse of PowerPoint. The point of that is just the PowerPoint. Look, anybody can make a PowerPoint. That's why we do it. It's easy. You just put up a few bullets. You don't even have to understand the bullets. You put a few bullets and you can just like wing it. If you have to whiteboard, you got to know that stuff. Then you'll start asking questions. You go deeper. You start whiteboarding more drawings, and you will become that trusted advisor with the client. If you want to convince a client that you know what you're doing and that you want to sway them or influence their buying decisions, that's the way to do it. Sorry for that long story, but I'm very passionate about that, right?
There's a great quote that I'm going to prompt Dirk on, because I always get it wrong and he corrects me, that I always attribute it to Einstein about if you can't explain a topic in 5 minutes or less, something to that effect. I think it's a Feynman quote, isn't it?
Yeah, Richard Feynman.
Richard Feynman. Do you have it, Greg? Because I don't. And Dirk's looking puzzled.
Yeah, puzzled.
The gist of it is that if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I like about Architecture Advantage. We spend 24 hours over 3 days talking about how to whiteboard, how to tell a story, but then going through, here are examples of architectures that you can use, not all at the same time. You're not going to do 20 hours of whiteboarding at once, but it's material. Once you have it in your head, you can stand in front with confidence and share how they could achieve their goals or solve their challenges.
Let me ask you guys a question. One of the reasons I really like Architecture Advantage, you guys do a terrific job on the technical aspects. And I'll reiterate again, you talk about the capabilities, not really about products, which is a clear differentiation. I mean, people figure out the products in the end, but you're right, you start with the capabilities, which is amazing. But the thing I really like about it is you add like human nature, what I would call behavioral economics almost, which is to me both puzzling and so interesting. Like if you ever read Amos Tversky, Daniel Kahneman, I think they've got some great books out there on how we behave. We think we behave one way, and then, like they say is, watch what they do, not what they say type thing. But you add a lot of these, like loss aversion, how people approach loss. Can you talk a little bit about some of those tactics and just give people, it's so important to study human psyche or their behavior to be part of selling and how you learn and teach and then get in front of a client.
Yeah, Daniel Kahneman, I think his name is. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, he won a Nobel Prize for basically plotting that loss aversion concept. Where originally, intuitively, you might think that people value potential gain as much as potential loss. But it's actually, it's completely askew from that, where people are so much more protective of what they have and afraid of loss that they will sacrifice an even greater potential gain just because they're afraid of losing what they have. And that's a big part of what Greg alluded to earlier in kind of that why change conversation, that aversion of loss, whether it's reputational or performance or things that matter to you personally, like that, because work is personal because we are people, right? And that loss aversion, because of the personal consequences of that, kind of obscures many potential great opportunities of greater efficiency and so forth.
Part of what we also teach in Architecture Advantage is there's a quote. It was a Harvard Business School professor. People don't buy quarter-inch drills; they buy quarter-inch holes, right? And as product sellers, we tend to focus on the drill. It's got all these speeds and quick change chuck and all these kinds of things. And what we're teaching the participants in Architecture Advantage is you've got to look past that to what is the value to the client? What is the benefit that they're getting from it? And so we're not talking about feeds and speeds. We're talking about if you had this capability, you could reduce your operating spend. You could improve your customer satisfaction, all those things that really matter. And what that contributes to is we're now talking about things that the client values. And they're far more interested and engaged in that conversation. It also helps for our participants and product sellers to say, if I don't have a story, that talks to that end client value, like we're wasting both our time. If I'm in there having a conversation.
Yeah, Al, to finish up there, you and I have talked about the fear of messing up, FOMO, quite a bit, and that's what this goes through too. Is there is a there's rightfully a big fear to say, well, if I invest in this thing or go this direction,
That's right.
am I locked in for 3 years? And if it doesn't work out, does it completely fall apart? And so some of the work we do in Architecture Advantage is, okay, maybe it's a flawed approach, but maybe there's a new way to do things. But that doesn't solve the fear of messing up. It's this, let's create a very gentle slope of adoption so that you can pivot at any time, because everything is going to go sideways at some point. So you want to make a way. And for us, even the listeners, maybe it's make sure you have a vendor agnostic architecture. Whatever choices you make sure it's based on open source. Otherwise, you're just locked in, and that's no good. Or maybe it's based on sovereignty, or maybe it's open AI models, or whatever the topic is. We can address that, and when we talk to the clients, what if you could just not have that fear? You have the choices to pivot when you need to, and here's the architecture you could apply to achieve it.
So fear of missing out, fear of messing up,
Yep.
loss aversion. What are other areas you think people should study as part of their selling tactics and really resonating with clients or anybody? I mean, any negotiation, just maybe at a dinner party. I mean, these are all interesting concepts. While you're thinking about that, I mean, like one thing that you guys explain, I mean, one of the things is to explain why change. Everybody's resistant to change. To your point, Greg, it's like the fear of messing up, right? You don't want to change if you don't have to. I mean, that's whether it's, you go to the restaurant, you get the same food, or whether it's your buying decisions. It's all the same. But one example that you guys gave resonates with me. I'm a huge baseball fan in the U.S. So again, I apologize for outside the U.S. By the way, anybody outside the U.S. can give me other examples. But one example that you start with as you're teaching, you talk about, hey, Babe Ruth, one of the greatest hitters of all time. I think everybody in the U.S. would know Babe Ruth, even if you're a sports fan or not. And when he started, he used a 54-ounce bat, right? To put that in perspective, today's batters typically use 30 to 35 ounces, right? But he's a big guy, and his thought was, hey, look, bigger the bat, the bigger the power, the more home runs I'm going to hit. And look, it worked for the most part. In 1918, he hit or led the league in home runs. His first year to do that, I think he hit only 11, but he hit 11. It still led the league back then, right? And then he proceeded to lead the league in the 11 of the next 13 seasons. But the interesting thing is his best year was in 1927, when he hit 60 home runs. Still one of the greatest seasons ever on record. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people, if you study baseball, that's when the ball was, I don't know, soft or what do you want to call it? It wasn't as juiced as it is today. So, I mean, it was hard. But the irony is he made an equipment change. After all those years, he switched to a lighter 40-ounce bat. Somebody talked to him and said, hey, you need to look at this. That's a 25% weight reduction. And he saw 5x improvement in his results. He would have never probably done that if he wouldn't have tried something new, changed something new, because intuitive sense was bigger equals more power. But then what he did was it increased the speed of the bat, which is just or more important, a little counterintuitive, which gave him actually more power. And that record held for I don't know how many years. But you guys give that as an example, which I really like, because it shows that you may be doing something that you think is solid for many, many years. You may be at the top of your game, as he was, many, many years. And then if you're really good at what you do, you know the product, you're able to whiteboard. Mm-hmm. You come in and you're able to say, hey, look, I'm going to give you a case of why you should change. And that's what you should be thinking about. That's a pretty good example. Let me pause there. I don't know if you have anything to add, but.
Yeah, one thing that we've been playing with, depending on the audience of the, because there are different groups of sellers in IBM. So there are the why change, that message and that framing is very important for our horizon sellers, where we have a large group of folks in IBM who are targeting large accounts that have very little spend with IBM. So the why change framing is critical for them, but then there are a whole other set of sellers, like our enterprise sellers, that sell into accounts that are established IBM accounts. And so for them, the framing isn't why change, because we don't necessarily want them to change off of IBM to something else. Like for them, the framing is either a why stay or a why evolve.
One of the things that we do in the class is we ask participants, who's your biggest competitor? And kind of the usual come out, right? And folks are shocked when we say, no, your biggest competitor is the status quo. right? You got to make that
That is
case for
true.
why
I was going to
change.
mention that, Chris. That's awesome. Thank you for doing that. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No worries. Always happy to
40% is typically the figure they give you, right? 40% of your competition is just status quo. So you're fighting yourself most of the time. You don't, because other competitors come in, they say the same thing very often, unless you're able to do the why change, why now, why IBM. So you're competing against yourself. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I'm a terrible host.
You're nailing it, right? But and I just wanted to relate that back. That's why, as we teach the class, being able to sort of see through, the speeds to what is it that the customer really needs, what do they value, is so important. Because you can't make that case for change, if you don't understand what the status quo is and what is it that they're missing out on, or what is the capability they could have if they made that change. So back to the Babe Ruth story, right? You got to be able to understand that, hey, if you used a lighter bat, you'd have, a greater swing speed, which is going to translate into more long balls. I don't know if that's the physics of it, but it sounds about right. You need to be able to do that in the context of your client's business. And that requires a lot of insight and knowledge, as to how your client operates and where they would find value in what you have to sell.
You know what? You made me think of some statistics that you guys have given that I brought up real quick. So listen to these statistics. 77% of buyers say they expect sellers to help them learn something new, essentially a buy-in vision. 86% will listen when sellers provide meaningful insight. 70% say the number one priority is improving the seller's ability to communicate value. 90% of buyers would meet with the sellers earlier in the buying process if the sellers added value. So if you want to get in, if they think you're going to have value, that you're all in. If not, you're out. 68% of those same buyers say that there's little or no differentiation among those sellers. That kind of says it all right there. I mean, you've got to get your message right.
And it's not just the message. So we've all been mentioning metrics, and there's very, very, very powerful ways to communicate metrics. And one of the overarching themes is how you phrase it to make who we're talking to not just the subject of the story, but the hero. And saying it's not about us. It's not about IBM. It's not about we. We're going to do this together. It's about you. What if you could achieve this? And as a result, hit 70% more productivity, 30% less infrastructure. I mean, some are technical metrics. Some are 40% better NPS score. Very customer driven. And we connect the thread between a decision at a mid-level technology team impacts profit, revenue, it impacts the business, and vice versa. Changes in how and directions of the business impact technology choices. And so having this complete thread to prove that everything really is interconnected from technology through business, through everything is part of the program as well.
So let's pivot a little bit. Look, that's how you teach. And I think that's incredibly important. So if you guys are listening out there, I would really dive into those concepts like loss aversion, et cetera. I mean, it's entertaining for one, but it's will make a profound impact on your ability to communicate with clients because it's just human nature. But I want to pivot a little bit in terms of some of the content that you guys are teaching, which I'm going to term, it's probably broader than this, quite honestly, but the AI operating model. And I wanted to ask you if you'd give a high level, and then maybe we can drill down on a few areas, but what the AI operating model is.
I'll start. One of the things that is important is teaching how to have meaningful conversations in very short amount of time. And so one way is to communicate, for example, you've got this great enterprise operation and you're evolving quickly to become an AI enterprise. And so you really need to focus on 4 levers. It's intelligence, it's action, it's operations, and trust. And the 1-minute version, you need to understand how you deliver intelligence. You need to understand your estate in real time. You need to be able to activate that intelligence and act on things. You need to be able to operate and scale and have resilience and efficiency with operations. And you need to be able to govern and secure the entire estate so that everything is trustworthy. So that's like a 30-second version, but it can go very deep with a lot of whiteboarding as well.
Let me restate what I think I heard back to you. Intelligence, this is where you're making the data ready for AI. Action, you put intelligence to work. operate or execution skill without any breaking any things, and then trust govern what you run.
Yeah.
Get that right?
Really good.
How do you guys break that down? What is your advice? How do you whiteboard something like that? That's a lot. That's a lot.
We actually did a podcast on this, and so the first thing we say is, hey, draw the word intelligence and put a box around it. And Dirk, maybe go into a brief example of intelligence.
Intelligence effectively means context, right? I mean, so one thing I like about the operating model is that it presents a nice sequence flow of the elements that are essential for a successful AI practice. When you think about it, every organization has these agents popping up all over the place, and what people are afraid of naturally is that these agents are going to go rogue or that they're going to consume too many tokens to spin. So value is critical, and so for an agent to make an appropriate kind of decision, it needs context, just like a human does. My favorite example when explaining any data concept is, imagine the loan officer that sits opposite you when you're looking for a mortgage. They have a dashboard in front of them of all your key information. Like, do you live in your mom's basement? Do you have a job? Do you have a good credit rating? And so agents need similar context. And so there are all kinds of criteria that when you ask the question of what is good context, well, is that agent appropriately informed? Is it complete information? Is the information good quality? Like, has it been, have outliers been scrubbed? All that kind of stuff. And is it timely? Is it current? I mean, so the example that almost everybody gives now when talking about currency is, if I'm crossing the street, which is kind of it's literally a life or death decision. Do I want a sense of, the cars that were on the street this time yesterday? Do I want to see what's coming at me right now? Right. And so for so many things, like all that context is critical. And the challenge is that many organizations have loads of context floating all over the place, but extracting appropriate context in a way that's consumable for either the human or the agent is very difficult. So that AI-ready data thing that Greg just mentioned, huge.
And to build just real quick, that what impacted the last client I was talking with is, you can have the best models in the world and the best public models, and intelligence isn't the artificial intelligence technology necessarily. It comes from your data, and real-time intelligence comes from your data expressing itself in real time. And so it's really about the data, about the context, about the information that you have that is unique, feeding the AI technology.
So look, when I have normal people on my podcast, I try not to market it, and I don't want to market IBM at all. I mean, this is agnostic. I have startups, different individuals that I have come on, and look, some of them have even like some competitive products or whatnot, but I want to learn about all different kinds of products. But where I'm going with this is, I asked them about differentiation. So I got to ask you guys about differentiation. Where do you think IBM is differentiated across the AI operating model?
It shows up in a number of areas. Like you asked not too long ago, Al, like, how do you whiteboard this, right? And part of, to bring it back to architecture advantage, is we highlight, where are the, I'll say, differences. We call it the IBM architecture advantage in our technology platforms. And so when we whiteboard the AI operating model, we really present it as, I'll call it, a subset of the capabilities that an enterprise needs. But it's the things that they should focus on right now, right, to take advantage of the explosion of AI agent and the capability it's going to bring and the change. And so when we look at, what is IBM's advantage, it shows up across all four of those levers that Greg talked about. Broadly, from an IBM perspective, we've always said it's hybrid cloud. So from a technology portfolio, we operate across on-premises hardware, whether that's in your data center or a colo facility. We operate across every major cloud. And if you're an enterprise of, well, now virtually any size, you're going to have at least, two of those things, multiple clouds, maybe some hardware that you own and operate. And if you're relying on different technology providers for each of those platforms, you're going to get silos, you're going to have gaps in capability, you're going to potentially have security exposures, complex, brittle environments. And from an IBM perspective, we're saying, no, we can give you a consistent set of tooling, a consistent set of controls, a consistent set of governance, et cetera, across all that, right? But you can use each of those platforms to their best purpose, or as best meets your requirements around things like sovereignty or, cost, et cetera, but do it in a consistent environment. And that's, I would say overall, that's IBM's architecture advantage. And then in each of those levers,
Tie back in.
we have, yeah, exactly. Shameless plug. We have capability, that we think is significantly differentiating. So Dirk, in intelligence.
Let me ask you this. When do you guys pull the product back in? And the reason I say that is because if I look across the AI operating model, and everything we put together, and just reiterating what you've kind of outlined there, Chris, is like we got Confluence. So now you have real-time data streams, right? We have Orchestrate. You can take all these agents, applications, data, workflows. You can get them coordinated and governed, right? We've got a Bob. Have you ever heard Project Bob? Anybody out there? Basically, it takes the software development lifecycle and allows your developers to write, modernize, test, whatever. We have governance, where you're able to govern, protect AI, move AI from pilot to production. I can keep going on. I'll give a couple more. Because we're talking capabilities, which is the right thing to do, but you got Hashi. That's the foundation for AI. Like you can have Vault for secrets. You can even use Terraform for automation, like infrastructure as code, Apptio, FinOps.
Yeah.
When do you bring it back? You don't want to avoid it, do you? Because at the end of the day, it's a bunch of products. But how do you talk to capabilities, and where do you bring it back, particularly when you're talking with clients? Because you don't want them to think that you're overselling. You just want to tell them, hey, here's what we can do.
It's part of the overall approach, right? Where you begin with a problem statement. This is where you are, and this is why the current situation that you're in is untenable for the foreseeable future. And from an intelligence perspective, is your agents are going to be flying blind, or they'll be making uninformed decisions. So that progression of the problem statement and where you are, and an opportunity of like what Greg described earlier is like, what if you could do X, Y, Z? What if your agents could be more well-informed? Or what if you were able to have kind of a central view across your agents of how they're behaving, so you can have kind of guardrails around them and so on? That what if, that is the springboard onto the value that we offer as a vendor, and where you get into the advantages like hybrid or being open, like with open source and open standards and so forth.
Dirk, I think what you're saying, if I could say, is basically you've got to have a use case. You've got to start with a use case.
100%.
It all starts with a use case. If you don't have a use case, then there's something wrong, because that's that pain point that you're constructing the use case.
Yeah, that's the framing device that makes it real. Yeah.
And what we do, right, in Architecture Advantage is we build out these, I'll call them complete enterprise architectures or platform architectures. And then clients might say, oh yeah, I have a product here that I really like for this capability, but I don't have this other capability that you've convinced me is important. How can IBM help me here? Oh, well, as luck would have it, we have a product that covers that off, right? And we can go into that conversation. Or if you've got the insight as an IBM salesperson, you can say, I know you've got X, Y, and Z, but here's a critical capability that's going to drive that use case that we all just talked about. And it's a product conversation.
Look, what you guys have done, and this is why I wanted to bring you on, is just the way you guys are teaching this architecture advantage is amazing. But I think, most of my listeners are probably not IBMers, but I thought they want to hear about this, and maybe it'll lend themselves to how they train. If they're sellers, how they would sell. Either way, these are all concepts they need to explore. Doesn't matter if you're in development services or not. Having said all that, is there any advice that you give to the listeners? Because this is an internal IBM training. They're like, why are you teaching me now? I want to take the training, and now I can't do it. So any advice just to explore the concepts we've outlined, or what?
Stay tuned. You never know if we're going to be able to do some external things. Chris and I have been brainstorming a couple things. But I guess at its core, one, stay curious about whomever you're talking to, whether it's in business or whatever. Just listen to understand. So you can understand, they're the hero of the story. Whatever you're trying to do and talk to them about, you want them to be the focus on them. Assuming it's a technology conversation, understand the technology. Make notes of where you don't really understand it. I do this all the time. Like, wait, I don't really. If I was asked about this box, I wouldn't have a good answer for it. So let's go deep dive into this. So at least I can draw it out and explain it in a simple way. And then practice. I tell all the people we work with, it's literally 20 times, if it's really important, of practicing different scenarios, different understandings. I know it's not all going to be talked about, but the more you rehearse and prepare, the better the outcome.
Yeah, one of the things I've enjoyed most about the program is the response that people have had, kind of post-pandemic, getting used to being around each other and being vulnerable. What we've all been very intentional and deliberate about is setting up a safe place where people can stretch out, experiment, because like we talked about before, I mean, you up there with a pen and a blank piece of paper and not the safety net of a next button, right? Where you almost don't have to think for yourself. Being up there with a pen, that it's all on you, and that's intimidating. And so people need space to practice, get constructive feedback, encouragement, because that, I mean, like Greg said, the practice is essential, but also that feedback and building some self-awareness about how you're coming across and what's some of the phrasing that you're using, and ultimately, like Greg said again, relating to the client. And that as a whole, I mean, for the hundreds of people that we've been working with in kind of teaching this new approach of, not new, but I mean, kind of novel approach for IBM at least of communicating has been very, very gratifying. And the response has been tremendous, really super positive.
Can't really add much, practice, practice being uncomfortable, to sum those up. And then I want to add, right, think past your client. Right? What is it that their leadership and their clients are demanding of them, and figure out how you contribute.
Going back to the challenger sale, what I just heard is like teach, tailor, take control. I think that still applies here. What I've heard you say is limit PowerPoint. To me, that's the 10, 20, 30 rule that people may or may not know about, which is like 10 slides, no longer than 20 minutes, 30-point font. That's the big kicker. Yeah. Nobody does that, right? Yeah. So limit it to its purpose. I'm not saying I'm against PowerPoint, but be able to whiteboard it. If you whiteboard it, you know it. My dad used to always say, you're fine presenting in front of anybody as long as you know more than they know. That's all you got. But the way you got to do that is you got to be able to practice. You got to know that whiteboarding. I think that does it, because then you know it. Even if you don't end up having a whiteboard, like in my case, you'll be ready. I think the other thing is tell stories. Why change? Why now? Why the decision you want them to have? You've got to be able to lay that out. Tell stories, connect with the audience. Another thing I always do is either start with a story, a question, or a fact, because it pulls people in. And I would say lastly is probably study behavioral economics to some end. One is it's just fascinating, absolutely fascinating, particularly Daniel Kahneman, Amos Tversky. Those books are amazing, man. They'll blow your mind, because you'll see yourself in those books and you go, that is how I behave. I say something and I do something completely different. I like loss aversion and different things like that. Once you know that, you're able to better communicate, even if you're not a seller. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put your LinkedIn on the show notes so people could reach out to you, just like they could reach out to me as well. I want to finish with a rapid fire. Can I do that? This is a rapid fire set of questions. There's no right or wrong answer that I've been asking probably the last 5 podcasts. They're just of interest to me. So this is going to be interesting because I got 3 people. You can agree to disagree on the call, which would make it really fun, by the way, if you do. But you're also welcome to agree. And it's kind of in the context of AI, because everybody's talking about AI right now, and I just keep going. So I'm curious about where your head's at here. So here's the questions. Open source or proprietary AI?
Open source AI, I don't know that, I mean, people talk about that. I don't know that it's a good idea, because truly, I mean, no one's going to do it. Open weight AI, that's different. Like open sourcing is all the way down to the data that goes into the training. No one's going to give that up. But the open weights, that's going to be essential, because that enables true democratization. People can execute it wherever they
leave it to Dirk to go down to the dissect it, right?
Oh, yeah. Adding clarity.
So, all right. Any other contrary opinions? Anything?
I'm going to say both. You need both.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right. What we're seeing in the market today, open weight, particularly in fit for purpose type applications, but the innovation we're seeing out of the proprietary frontier models, I think that's going to continue for a long time.
Agree.
All right. Build or buy? Build or buy?
I'll start with that. I think you should build what is truly unique for your vision and acquire the rest, either through open or a trusted vendor. There's so many things to do. So spend the time on the thing that you're unique at, and then buy the rest.
I'm going to add to that, right? So that's a classic, to the build or buy. I think these days it's, is it differentiating? And then the next question is it critical if it goes out? And if the answer is no, build. If it is, buy. Because in these days, generative AI, et cetera, it's pretty easy to go and build your own capability. And as long as you're not too concerned about availability, reliability, etc., you can get there pretty cheaply.
Yeah, I have a heavy bias to buy. I remember I was at a client a decade or so ago, and their engineering team was literally building their own relational database. You talk about reinventing a wheel, a complex wheel.
But I think that goes with what Greg said. I agree. I mean, if it's in your sweet spot, which everybody's a tech company now, right? Mm-hmm. But doesn't mean that you should invent a database if it's already been invented. It's people get mad. Look, I'm a database guy. You could say it's a commodity. I love database, but there's a database that I prefer, and I'll pay extra for it. So is that a commodity or not? It doesn't matter, but it's already been invented. Why would you recreate it? I totally get what you're saying, Dirk. All right, one AI tool that you use every day.
To be honest, I use IBM Bob every day with a mixer Copilot.
Say why real quick, Greg. I mean,
real quick, because it has the technical precision that I want. It'll search the internet, it'll code, it'll do down to the details, so I can further understand and communicate.
Bob, for those listening, is basically it's essentially a code translator, right? Modernized test, but it's bigger than that. It does the entire SDLC, and people use it for all creating whiteboards, for that matter.
Yeah.
Speaking of, so you guys should check it out if you're listening. You can get it free, at least for a trial period. It's like, but I'd say better than Claude, Cursor, things like that. All right, any other? Chris,
does the Spotify DJ count?
Sure counts. Nice. Are you using Spotify DJ? Are you?
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic.
I use Bob for a lot of my development type work, and then, to be honest, I now use Gemini as kind of my general search engine. Yeah. It's pretty much replaced the Google prompt for me.
Yeah, Gemini is my daily driver for Gen AI as well.
You like it better than Claude? Look, OpenAI. Why Gemini? I guess is the question.
I like it. It's probably the simplest one.
It's just easy. That seems to be it, right?
I've tried the other major ones, and my mileage has varied. Let's just say, and I've had the least latency, the least heartburn, the least thumbs down for results I get back with that one.
I think you're right. Actually, I try them all, and I try to explore them all, and purposely just to make sure there's nothing I'm missing. I'm in the business, right? But I think Gemini I come back to more than anything else. Yeah. To your point, you didn't, Greg. You kind of went, You're not using Gemini? That's not your preferred?
Oh yeah, that's my go-to for personal things.
Okay. All right. One book every technologist should read. You guys do read, don't you?
Yeah, it's narrowing it down to one book.
Let's pick one. It doesn't. This is what everybody. Don't get stuck on. Just give a book. I mean, because you could change tomorrow. It's like favorite songs. I have a favorite song today, but tomorrow it's going to change.
This is going to be weird, but make it stick. It's I don't remember the authors, but it's a couple of brothers, and it's about presenting ideas in a way that is relatable and makes them sticky. And every couple of years I reread it.
That's a good answer.
This is kind of a deep cut, maybe, or maybe not maybe it's not deep, but it's maybe not immediately relevant or immediately obvious. It's Neil Postman's "Amusing Ourselves to Death." I've read it a bunch of times, and its thesis is effectively, and it came out, kind of early internet years in the 90s or late 80s, and the idea behind it is that we are so like that came out in an era where people were watching a lot of television, stuff like that, and now in the era of scrolling, the infinite scroll, it's even more relevant because we get so stuck in our own little worlds that kind of unplugging and touching grass and talking to real people is more essential. Kind of like what we were talking about earlier about like the lack of receptiveness that people have to content if they know that AI generated it, right? So
it's interesting. That book is interesting to me because I'm a big believer in how big your world is.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like the old lady at the grocery store putting all her coupons up. For me, I'm like, come on. But for her, that's important to her. That's where her world is. She spent all day clipping these coupons, I've got this neighbor that's got a little sign in the front yard, please don't have your dog go in my yard. But what about the squirrels? I get the dog thing. It'll make a mark or whatever, but and I used to care about that, but right now I got so many things I got to get done. I mean, like, that's the last thing I'm thinking about. It's like, so I always think about, and I respect it too, it's just how big somebody's world is. Greg, what do you got?
All right, I'm going to go. There's a book that helped me with troubleshooting, storytelling, relationship. Ironically, it's Project Hail Mary. It was one of the best books I've ever read. So that's my answer.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
why the guy that wrote Project Hail Mary, which is the movie out now, also wrote The Martian.
The Martian,
Amazing book.
And Artemis. Yeah.
All right. Last question. We've been going long. What's true? What's true, but people don't agree with you on?
I'll start with something I alluded to earlier. I believe that AI will damage a relationship if you use it directly. Just use it as a tool and to help you prepare, but don't replace it with interacting with humans.
I agree with him on that. Does that mean it
I
doesn't?
agree as well.
You
Terrible,
can't
Greg.
steal his now. He went first. That's why you always go. My buddy always tells
He
me
cheated
always
mine.
buy the first round. You got to buy the first round so that everybody else gets the rest.
Yeah.
You went first.
Yeah. Greg's hot take was ice cold. Yeah.
In this room.
So, Chris, Dirk, you got to give me one, and then we're done. I know you got a meeting you're missing.
Yeah, I got one. So I feel very strongly that that general intelligence is not imminent with AI, at least with the current architecture of AI. Tons
That's
of people are
mine,
going to.
damn it.
Oh, is it?
No, because here's I take a little different take. I think that's a great take, but I think AGI, I don't know if we'll ever hit it. And here's why I say that is because it keeps changing. It keeps changing. The definition, if you would have gave us that definition 20 years ago, where we are today, we'd have said, we hit AGI. Have you noticed that it just keeps moving? The ball keeps moving. So I don't know if we'll ever fully hit it.
Yeah, we won't.
All right, Chris, last one. Greg thinks he has to go someplace.
Yeah.
Don't got it?
Well, you know what? This isn't a strong opinion, but I'm pretty convinced AI is not going to destroy the world. I watched a documentary the other day where there was a number of people who were legitimately very, very worried, right, that it was going to be the end of society, et cetera. And I think that's way overblown.
One way or another, the sun will probably come up tomorrow. We just might not be here to enjoy it. All right. I appreciate
Thank you
This
so
has been
much.
very good. Listeners, hit us on almartintalksdata@gmail.com. Hope you enjoyed this. A little different today, but we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you on the podcast. Bye-bye.